You know, we're gonna pop in Mondays. Y'all know we go Today's discussion is about are you in accountable relationships? Now we asked that question, and there's obviously different components to being in accountable relationships, but we want to focus on four main points to really establish whether you're in accountable relationships. And the first point, we want to define what accountable relationships are. And accountable relationships are starting and building your relationships through core values, sitting down, having discussions, explaining what you believe in, what's your faith, what adjectives define you, and listening to what the other person says, their adjectives define them, and living through those core values, having that belief system, and running your relationships through that belief system, where you can hold them accountable based on who they say they're going to be and the core values they say they have, and they can hold you accountable based on your core values. So when you start a relationship through, your core values and what your core values is, governs the relationship and allows two people to really flourish and hold each other accountable at the same time, have a clear understanding of who each other is.
Yeah, and the next point is, do all the people in your life remain focused on best practice? Now, there's about quite a few ways to do something, right? But are you guys all doing it with keeping in mind the best practice for everyone that's involved? So that's, when we're all coexisting in a group, it's what you may do as best practice when you're alone may not transfer over to best practice when you are in a group. It doesn't really transfer over the same. So when you are making decisions and you're thinking about the people around you, are you thinking about what's the best thing for everyone? Are the people around you thinking about what's the best thing for everyone? Because that would help everyone remain accountable within that relationship.
Definitely.
And then,
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna just add on.
Oh, good.
To it, but and also, making sure that you understand it's not about right and wrong. It is about best practice. So obviously 20 things can be right. There can be 20 people sitting in a group, and all of them could have a clear right answer. But there's something called best practice. So what's the best practice? It basically benefits everybody within the group. So it's what's going to enhance the group as a unit versus what's going to enhance the individual. So keep that in mind when we talking best practice. That's what we're talking about.
And then the third point is, are you motivated by their joy? So are you invested in their happiness? Are you invested in the things that bring them joy? Because that would also help you have the best healthy relationship that you could possibly have with the people around you. It's all good if you guys are all, hanging out and having fun, but everyone has, their goals or things that makes them happy and that sparks joy for them. So what are the things that you are doing to help them get to where they want to go? What are the things you're doing to help them get there? How are you supporting them? It's one thing, like I said, to go out and, go out drinking or have, recreational fun, but what are you bringing to their life that you're not maybe getting something directly out of it? Like what are the areas that you're supporting them in? And that's really important when you're fostering relationships as well.
Definitely. And our fourth one and last one is, are y'all making lifetime plans? So like Jerry said, you can go out, you can make plans to go out, meet up, you can make plans to go to the movies, but are y'all talking about long-term goals? Are y'all talking about, what we going to do to maybe build a business together like we did, obviously?
Yeah.
Are you talking about raising children? Because if you started off as friends when you were younger, as you get older, you know that you're going to get a spouse, y'all going to start having children. Are y'all talking about blending life together? Are y'all talking about how you're going to raise each other's children and how you're going to be in each other's life through the trials and tribulations of raising children? Are y'all, like Jerry said, talking about each other's joys and making sure that y'all focus and y'all have a narrow focus on those joys? Are y'all basing the people that y'all allow in your life around the friendships y'all already have? Like, if you bring somebody into the fold that's not going to enhance the relationships you already have, are you willing to risk all the relationships you have to bring a new person into the fold? So you got to truly ask yourself, are you living for yourself, or are you living in accountable relationships?
And it's something as simple as moving to another borough.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Like I could move to Long Island. That's far from Manhattan. What is that going to do to our friendships? You know, or maybe if you want to relocate out of state, is that something that you guys thought, talked about as a group, or is that something that, if you decide to move out of state, like how is that going to impact your relationship? And having those conversations, or when you are starting relationships, letting the other person know that, hey, I always wanted to move, down south, and give, the people around you choice on if that's, if you're a person that they really want to invest time in, knowing that you're going to move out of state. So it's really making plans together in that way as well, not just the day-to-day, moment-to-moment, or, when you need that quick pick-me-up. It's every day that you're thinking about how these people are going to be a part of your life.
Definitely. So we want to ask our panelists and people listening on the side. You can chime in on Facebook if you're listening on Facebook. I mean, are you after hearing that? Are you in accountable relationships?
Personally, I can say that the vast majority of my relationships, friendships, family relationships are accountable, but there are almost as many that aren't. Um, but the ones that are, I think I hold closer to my heart because we take the time to include each other in almost all the decisions that we make, unconsciously and consciously. And I think that when it becomes like second nature to wonder how a person is affected by what you do, that's how you know how solid you guys are.
Definitely.
It's never one of those things where I'm like, ooh, let me write down a list of people that I need to check in with. It's like you already know who your go-tos are, like the people that are going to be the most moved by the decisions that you make and the moves that you make. Even with like what Jerry was saying, as far as moving, I know that there was a point in time where I moved to the beat of my own drum. I still do. But at one point, I wasn't considering how my friendships got affected by me being so far away. Once I started to see that, it's like once you're in it, then you realize and you're like, okay, we don't talk as often, or the bond isn't as tight as it used to be, or they're not checking in and telling me what's going on with them. And then you realize like, oh, because they felt disconnected. They felt like I didn't care enough about the friendship or, the basis of our relationship to include them in my decision, because ultimately it was my decision, um, that's when you start to take the selfishness out of it and become selfless. I had to realize that in saying that I love these individuals, I have to consider their feelings to an extent. And that I couldn't say that I loved them if I didn't care about how their life is impacted by what I do.
Definitely.
Not saying to be governed by that, but, at least considering it.
Well, that's a good assessment, because a lot of times when we often move away and make those types of decisions, we think that it's the other people that are not really making the effort. You know what I mean? But we made the decision. So if we make the decision to move miles and miles away, then we have to probably put in the extra work to make sure that we're fully connected, and not leave it on the other person to say, well, I moved away and now it's not as easy to get to me. So, oh, well, like, so it's like you said, it's not something that they're not governing you, but you are considering them because you are building life with them. And it's something that when people think of, if I want to move, I shouldn't have to consult with my friends. Like, who are they? You know what I mean? But if they are truly your support system, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like if you truly want to continue to foster that relationship and grow with them, why wouldn't you want to consult with them and make sure that they are in your plans?
Definitely. And you made an important distinction between, like while you was having the discussion and you said being selfish versus selfless.
Mm-hmm.
And when we enter our relationships, they are selfish because we're taking, those are the people we're deciding to bring into our lives. But you do have to be selfish within the relationships, right? And I just wanted to touch on the fact that you said, you know, without taking their feelings into account, you was being selfish. So it's bigger than just feelings. You wasn't practicing a principle.
Yeah.
So even if you like a person, let's say you're discussing that with me and you was like, well, I should have took your feelings into account. I'm like, it's more than our feelings. You didn't take our relationship into account. You broke a principle. You know what I mean? So yeah, it hurt my feelings, but my feelings are hurt. My feelings may be hurt when you do something positive.
Mhm.
So that's something that can't govern our relationship. But the fact that you broke a promise or you broke a commitment or you moved just for the sake of moving and did what you wanted to do and didn't even factor me in, that broke our bond, that broke our relationship. So we need to start really looking at our core values. We saying we're loyal. Loyalty means just keeping a person posted, having the discussion, being focused on that principle of loyalty and making sure you don't go outside that parameter. You see what I'm saying? So I do think like you took accountability, which is very important. But at the same time, you know, we want you to always think the feelings is constant. That's a constant thing. You're going to feel, I'm going to feel. But what's going to allow us to govern our relationship is based on what we agreed to. You know what I mean? The principles around it, the core values around it. And based on our belief, that should affect how we feel because it will change how I feel based on how you explain it to me.
Right.
Right. So once you explain it to me, it wasn't the feeling of it. It was the fact that you knew you was accurate. And then you explained it to me and I'm like, oh, I can see that. Changes everything based on my new belief that you showed me. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's big on the communication part of it, you know, being able to communicate that and say it's something greater than them feeling it. It's something that's accurate. I was wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a difference between a person's feelings and you being wrong, dead wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you have to have that distinction at all times. But
Well, I
go
mean,
ahead, Jasmine.
oh,
Sorry.
Yeah, I think I mean, I know for the most part, my relationships are based on accountability and like who I'm accountable to, and I have like those off-end relationships, like I would say with my father, who we haven't fully had a conversation and like solidified basically um, that dynamic of our relationship. It's kind of like it's not really defined quite yet, but outside of him, and we're not, you know, he knows enough, we know enough that we're not close, but there's still a conversation needs to be had. Outside of that, my main support, that understanding is there, and anybody that I meet forward, um, they kind of know what it is. Like I let them know what it is. But I think one thing that's important that you touched on that I am learning just through different experiences that I'm having with my friends is that I don't always, even though I preach accountability and I talk about me being accountable, I still don't fully have their best interests always in mind, just in regards to like, yeah, I still live single-minded sometimes. So like, this is it's funny, but so as an example for like dishes, like I'll put them where I think is gonna benefit, but I won't might maybe communicate that, or I won't care, I won't necessarily think will it benefit them too. I'm just thinking like this is where I want it. So I think that there's different things that where I can improve on, where I'm not accountable, and I kind of feel entitled to having certain ideas about certain things, um, that I can see that when I don't communicate that, it affects them anyway. You know, so I think that there's some things that I can improve on in that regard.
Okay. Well, I mean, we all like that. That's we all in flux at all times. So the whole point is to really look deep and really start seeing what's best practice all the time. You have to believe it. You have to believe best practice will actually empower and enhance our relationships. If you don't believe it, it's going to be a chore. You're going to feel trapped. You're going to feel trapped by anything called friends or spouse. Any commitment you're going to feel trapped by because you're not prepared. You're
mhm.
not ready. You're not ready to really look out and really look into building a life with other people. You're looking at how these people benefit me. You're not looking how we can benefit each other. And that's where it gets a little distorted. So like you talked about the dishes. And if you live with people, yeah, you have to, though you are the person who governs the dishes, you do have to tell them, listen, I'm putting it here, because they're going to go into the same place that you put it before, right? And then they're going to think it's there, but you moved it. So then it becomes a bigger argument. It's not about the dishes anymore.
Yeah.
It's about communication. It's about lack of communication. So we can say that's a small thing or a minor thing, but it does show an intention. It does show that you're not being intentional when it comes to your relationships and being mindful of what you're doing with the small things, because everybody always talks about how small things can be, but the small things turn into bigger things. So you should nip them in the butt while they're small.
Yeah, it's like if they get it gets annoying, and
Yeah.
then like I get annoyed, but just look
This
for
is why they keep asking you.
Yeah, like why you pay attention, but then I'm not paying attention. I'm being hypocrite because I'm not paying attention to, well, it might have been there for the past month, but I have to move it because something, a new appliance was bought and the order had to change.
Definitely.
I'm mindful of, well, I got to communicate that. I'm just thinking like, pay attention, but it's not that easy because I myself don't want to just look for something if I know somebody else knows what the hell it is,
I mean, it's just cause and effect. Sorry, Lyric. It's just cause and effect. You should practice cause and effect. What's the cause? And that's going to cause the effect. So who started the trickle effect? And it's usually that person should get the blunt of the responsibility.
Mhm.
Everything else happened after that.
Yeah.
So if you start looking within and saying, did I start this? Then you start arguing less, you start bickering less, and you start seeing where the other person's coming from. Empathy is very important in accountable relationships. And I forgot to add that when I was defining it, but empathy and having a clear understanding, you know what you think. So don't spend too much time in what you think. Try to spend more time in what the other person's thinking.
Yeah.
And where the other person's coming from. If you're spending more time where you're coming from, 9 times out of 10, you're not hearing what's being said.
Yeah, and then off of that, I think it's a big thing about the fact that we stay inside our own head so much and we expect people to know what's going on in our heads. Like that's how 90% of arguments start. It's just like, well, I assumed you knew X, Y, and Z, and that's where the problem is. Us assuming things instead of just asking the questions. Like, even if it sounds like it may be a stupid question or not worth asking, that little question can stop a whirlwind of things from happening. Because I know I go through it sometimes too, and I just be like, okay, I'm just gonna do this, and everybody will just kind of pick up, and I'm just like, yeah, they're not inside your head. They don't know what you're thinking about. They don't know why you're doing what you're doing, because it may seem like common sense to me, and it may not be common sense to the next person, obviously, because we're different people. So yeah, this just making less assumptions and just asking questions, having the conversations.
And obviously we're juggling. Go ahead, Jerry.
No, I was gonna say, we just had a conversation before we even got on, right? We changed our Facebook password, and he's the verifier of the account. So I looked up at him and I said, can I get the code? And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? I never said, hey, I'm trying to get into Facebook. Hey, could you do whatever? But because I saw his phone go off and he looked down, I just assumed that he was looking down at exactly what I thought he was looking down. And he's like, no, and I said it very matter of fact, can I get the code? And he's like, the code? What are you even talking about right now? So yeah, a lot of times we don't, and based on who I am, like I said, I could walk into a room and just start talking. So him being who I am, he's thinking I'm being flighty and just throwing something out there, not really paying attention to what's going on. When this time I was very direct on what I needed, but because of who I am, is how he reacted to it. And that's another thing that people don't really take into consideration when you are connecting with other people is, who are you to that person? When you're talking to them, what are they? How they react to you is based on who they believe you are.
Definitely.
Are we taking that into consideration ever? And a lot of times when it's us, no, we're not. We just want what we want, and we think that and we may have the best intentions in those moments, right? But based on who we are, you could see why a person may react the way that they are reacting. And I think that that's one part of relationships where we don't always nail. We get tripped up in the not really wanting to believe that there is this thing called track record that whether people are verbalizing it or not, they're thinking it and they're reacting to you based on it. And we need to always acknowledge that and have that conversation. But before we move on, I want to touch on the comment on Facebook, Anissa. I'm sorry, I've been trying to get to you 20 minutes ago, but she basically said that she's not in an accountable relationship. No one considers her feelings or thoughts by their actions. And our question to you is, are you having the conversations with them? Are you bringing it to their attention? Like, how did that even, how was that even happening within your relationships? Did you set the boundaries? Did you guys talk about what your relationship should look like so that you can hold them to that standard? We'd like to hear from you. If you want to join us on Zoom, that's great. But if you want to type it out, I'll come back to Facebook for it.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you made a good point when you said, is she having the discussions? Is she really having the discussions? Because everything is all about, and everybody says it's cliche, but everything is all about being unafraid to have the discussion. Everything is all about it. So Lyric touched on the fact that we do live in our heads, and Jasmine agreed, and Jerry agreed, and so it's like you're constantly living in your head, thinking that people or assuming people know certain things, right? And let's be honest, when we have relationships, we're expecting them to know information that we already gave to them. So they're responsible for that. Once we like, oh, do you remember this? And now we reference it, yeah, that's on them. If now we got to explain it all over again, that's them lacking and them not paying attention and them not prioritizing what's being said to them. But if you just come up with a thought in your head and just decide to move and think that that's just going to go well, that's where we go wrong. Everything should be discussed. And it shouldn't be, like I said before, it shouldn't be a jail sentence. Oh, I'm grown. Why I have to discuss everything? How about you grown so you know better than not to discuss everything? We ask our children all the time to text us when you get to the place. Let us know where you this. Let us know why. Because we understand as adults how important it is to be clear and communicate. So we're educating them to be accountable adults, or we're informing them or grooming them to be accountable adults. But then when we become adults, we want to be teens. We don't want responsibility. We don't want to tell, I'm not telling you nothing. I shouldn't have to tell you everything, but you should. Like, that's the whole point in joining a relationship. So they know where you at blindly. They can vouch for your character. They can vouch for who you are. You're in the court of law. They know who you are like the back of their hand. That's the whole point. This person would never do this without doing this. They should be able to trust you and know who you are blindly. But that comes with checking in. That comes with constantly having discussions. That comes with, in the beginning, explaining yourself a whole lot, having back and forth, having discussions, clashing, working through that. Because overall, the destination is common ground. We can't move if we're not common.
Well, I mean, believe it or not, there's other people that care about you besides your parents and your significant other. So, for us to be narrow and think that, our friends we don't really need to check in with our friends because they're just our friends is really, kind of not putting the relationship, not really acknowledging how important the relationships are in your life. So as friends, you should want to know, did they make it home safely? You should know that if my friend didn't show up to work one day and didn't call, I immediately know that they're not being irresponsible, that something happened and maybe we need to, call the cops. You know what I mean? Like, there's just certain habits that you should create for the people that care about you, because it's about checks and balance, and you don't have to be the teenager or the kid just getting out there by themselves. It's really about us making sure that we're looking out for one another, and not just to keep tabs, but it's more just to make sure that you're navigating and moving from point A to B to C to D and getting to where you need to go safely. Like, I remember when I was dating, online dating at that, I was meeting, guys that I met online. So I would get to the place, I would sit down and I would, text my friends, I'm safe. And his name is this, and he looks like this, and there's his picture. And, like, I'm giving them the whole rundown, because if I go missing, they have a place.
They need to know who to find.
Yeah, exactly. And, the guys may have thought it was weird, like, you're an adult, like, what the hell are you doing? But it's just for safety measures, and did I think that I was going to get kidnapped? No. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt to have that extra level of security. At least the people that you're around know that you made it home safely from this date, from this random guy that you met online. You know what I mean? So it's not, if you think that it's prison, if you think that, you're grown and you don't have to answer to anybody, then that's, I wouldn't
You're not
recommend
ready
that.
for accountable relationship.
But you're not ready for an accountable relationship. But if you are, then it's like nothing to say, hey, let me take a minute and text my friends and let them know I got home safely.
It
Hey,
does just take a minute.
and text the people that I love to let them know that I made it, to the event safely. You know what I mean? Like it's something that you want to do, not something that you feel forced to do.
Right. And then I think also it's like getting out of the mindset of thinking that everything is meant to be controlling.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get that from like growing up, like in all their moves being controlled and they can't do
Like
what
me,
they
myself,
want to
and I.
do.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like there's a lot of people that scream that they want support, but you don't want to check in with the people that you have for support. Like, how can they support you if they don't know what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
And vice versa. So it's just like, nobody's trying to control you. We just want to make sure you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a little, redundant and annoying to like, okay, I gotta tell you this every time I go somewhere, but at the same time, you'll be grateful for that in the long run. Like if these are the people that you trust, these are the people that, you hold dear and, you trust with your life and you know that they'll be there without a shadow of a doubt. You chose these people for a reason. So why wouldn't you want to keep them in the loop? It doesn't make sense.
Well, when you truly buy in, it doesn't feel like work.
Exactly. There's two things. And one, this is like going to be a small version of it, but basically goes back to what Aziz was saying about like when you believe it. It's just like when I was working out and I was trying to get into college and I was working out every single day. It was not a day that I thought, oh God, I got to work out. I was like completely motivated and it became a natural routine. I can eat the same thing every day. I can do anything consistently and it wouldn't bother me because it was what I believed I needed to do and it didn't bother me not one bit. So I believe that 100% when Aziz, when you say like it's a belief system, because once it becomes a belief system, it literally becomes like part of your routine. Not even a bothersome, like you're not even bothered by it. But one of the bigger things I want to touch on was what I think, Jerry, you said her name was Anise or Anissa?
Anisha.
Yeah.
Anisha.
Yeah, just that what she said, it triggered something to me because she said that she wasn't in any relationships, like none of the relationships that she's in, where she feels like she's reciprocating actions of accountability. And my first thought was, and how I can relate to that is, I would say like victim, right? Like that makes me look at myself and say, I'm choosing. So I can say like, I'm not in a relationship with other people who are being accountable to me, but I'm actually in these relationships. And it makes me like look at myself and say, a lot of the times I often feel or think about how things are kind of happening to me. And I'm not really realizing that my mentality or my choices are basically leaving me in these situations, which leaves me unaccountable for myself and my own decisions.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? So it just kind of made me think like, yeah, there's times where I'm always like, where I'm like, oh, this is happening, but it's like, but I'm also choosing to stay in a situation, and so just to speak on that, like,
yeah, how you communicate does truly empower you. How you communicate does empower you. It does decide how you're gonna take in the information. At the same time, I'm sure she's like, okay, I've been this person that's nurturing and being there for these people, and I'm giving them a chance because I'm sure they're like, I'm sorry, I'll do better. I'm sorry, I'll do better. Like we would have to get more information of her circumstance, but before we can attach the, whether she's being the victim, and I know that's not what you were saying.
Yeah. I was gonna say
you're just saying based on that it triggered something within you, but
yeah.
Before we can even go there, we always have to, okay, how long have you been doing this? How long have you been complaining about this? What are you doing about this? So there are obviously follow-up questions that we always have. Like when we have sessions, we have a whole session to do so, right? But right now we're just, we're talking about a vague situation. She was just answering whether she's in accountable relationships.
Yeah, well, she did answer though. She said that she has tried in the past talking, but nothing positive evolved and she just moved on.
Definitely.
But again, we don't have the backstory. Jasmine nailed it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Definitely.
She said that she was spot on. A lot of times too, we build relationships kind of in a go with the flow kind of manner, and we don't really set anything. We don't set a principle, or we don't say, hey, this is what our friendship is going to be about. This is what I believe. This is what you believe. Like, you know, we don't, so that we have very loose boundaries, right? So as the relationship matures, and this is any relationship, so as relationships mature, you tend to want more out of them, right? And then here you are thinking, you know, we've been friends for 5 years, let's start to build on this, and their friends looking at you like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not what I signed up for. That's not who you are. That's not what, that's not when we decided to be friends. We didn't decide on that, so it's really important to, when you are connecting with people, to be mindful on how you're connecting with them. And when you typically start a relationship with go with the flow, usually when one person, it only works when both people believe that going with the flow is going to work for them. But when one person wants more, it's going to get to this place of conflict where one is going to want more, the other one doesn't, and now you feel trapped, like, I didn't sign up for this, and it becomes an issue, and that's where the conflict happens. So we talk about accountable relationships, which is great, but it only really works when two people are on the same page and they want the same things, and they are starting the relationship wanting those things. Or you maybe have been friends for 5 years and realize, you know what, we've been acting like teenagers the whole entire time. I really want us to have a more mature relationship. How could we go about doing it? There's You can always revamp your relationship. You can always, go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, this is not quite working. Let's find something that works for the both of us, old or new. But you guys have to take the time to really think about it and want it at the same time. The minute that one wants and the other one doesn't, it's where you guys are probably going to go your separate ways. So that's why, again, like Anisha, we don't really know the true story about, the people, how long they've been in your life, but it's really important to reflect and think, how did the relationship start to begin with? And that will probably shed light on why they're not listening, why the conversations are not going in the positive direction that you wanted it to go in.
Definitely. And to add to that, um, I want people to understand that accountable being in relationships of faith. And we all have witnessed relationships where we had to walk away or we had to move on. But the biggest thing when dealing with accountable relationships, like, we pride ourselves on being love snobs, not because, oh, we have the greatest relationships all the time. It's
No.
because we believe in having great relationships. It doesn't change. So, like, I can be friendless tomorrow. I'm still gonna believe that I should be getting accountable friendships. And I still believe in friendships. So I put myself in positions to gain more friends though. A lot of people get hurt and they close up
Yeah.
and they forget about the relationship component of life. Like, we can build on ourselves forever, but we truly don't know who we are until we're in relationships. So don't believe you doing whatever you're doing for you is going to make you a whole person. Knowing who you truly are is going to now say, I'm self-aware enough to introduce myself to other people. And once you're with those other people, you have to know what you want. And a part of what's in our DNA and what we all want is relationships. So we need to keep that in mind every time we tell ourselves, because two or three people hurt us, or two or three people's not there, or two or three people really turned their backs on us. And we start telling ourselves, we're never going to have good friends. And we start saying people instead of those people,
Hmm.
is when we start losing the faith of relationships. And there's no way you could be in an accountable relationship when somebody has to prove to you that relationships are good. So
Yeah.
you shouldn't go into your next relationship talking about, well, nobody was accountable, so they got to work overtime. It's a new relationship. Come with the same energy. In the case of Anisha, come with the same energy that you had with the friends that weren't taking you in. And hopefully these new friends will take you in and really reciprocate everything you're giving them, and they'll give back to you. But if you said you was being accountable, keep that same energy. I just wanted to really touch on that. And Lyric, I seen that you had something to say, so go ahead.
I lost it. It's gone. It's gone. But I
yeah.
think y'all kind of said a little bit of everything that I was gonna say, so it's cool.
So, you know, we really want to touch on, we keep touching on the accountable relationship portion, but we want to really understand, why are people really sitting down and focusing on best practice, or are we still entering relationships to see what we can get out of it? Like, I hear a lot of people like, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. And what is their purpose in your life? That's a part of best practice. You should be clear on what everybody's purpose is in your life. If a stranger walks up to you and you don't understand, how many people we talk to and we ask, why is this person in your life, and they're stuck? And it happens so frequent. It's rare when we find people that have a clear understanding of why. It's the years, the time spent, the I don't want to detach because maybe they might improve, right? So you're going through all these hardships because you're telling yourself all these things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because what really matters is, how much are they putting into you and how much are you putting into them? If you're putting into them and they're putting into them, it's not a relationship. It's servitude. It's not a relationship. So yeah, you feel good because you're nurturing them. You feel good because you're empowering them. But if they're not giving anything back to you, love is a boomerang. If you're throwing it out and not getting it back, it's not love. So we need to stop saying, based on the emotional aspect of it, that we love people. Like, love is a boomerang. You should see it. They should reflect it. So when somebody asks you, why are you in a relationship with this person? And then you're like, because I love them. And then you're like, okay, you love them. Why do you love them? And you're stuck. You're not doing a lot of thinking on a daily basis on why these people's in your life. So accountable relationships is already, best practice is always waking up and having clear, defined understandings of why a person's in your life. Because once you're stuck, you need to have a discussion. Because I've been stuck. Me and Jerry have been in each other's lives and I've been stuck. Like, why is she in my life at this point? Because she's causing me havoc. And we had to have a discussion. Mm-hmm. Like, we've been through it. We've been through times when we weren't friends for months. Like, because I'm really questioning. At this point, I'm doing all for her. And I'm like, what am I getting? You know, and there was times she like can say, okay, I'm doing everything. And she feels like, what am I getting? We have to have the discussions. And that's why we have an accountable relationship, because we're unafraid, not because we don't argue all the time, because we still argue quite frequently, but it's because we're unafraid to have those discussions. If something feels is not going right, she could wake up daily and call me and we could have that discussion about our friendship. I don't believe she's entitled to be my friend. I believe that our friendship is predicated on the fact that she continuously wants to keep coming back. And I want to come back, because we are actually enhancing each other's lives more than we hindering them. But once that changes, understand the relationship will change and the title will change. Mm-hmm. So your security don't come from the fact that, oh, well, I always could rely on them. Your security comes from the fact that y'all share the same core values. Y'all have open lines of communication. Y'all clear on your goals. Y'all have a destination. Y'all understand why each other is in each other's lives. That's what gives you your security. So,
yeah, and being unafraid to have the conversation, being unafraid to say, you know what, this is not really working for me. Things have been one-sided. Saying the things that are uncomfortable to say, but you're unafraid to say it. And I think a lot of people, they don't want to deal with that in the moment. So they keep it to themselves, and it keeps building. And then it comes out in other ways. And then the argument happens and you're arguing about something other than what you should be arguing about. So it's really about being unafraid to even have the discussion. Or when someone says, hey, I need to talk to you about a relationship, and being present and wanting to have that conversation as well, and not avoiding it. How many times have we set time up to speak to certain people about certain, the relationship, and that was the end of the relationship. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they like, hey, let's schedule a time to talk, because things are not going well right now. And it's like, they ghost you. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, you know, it may seem like it's an easy thing to do, but a lot of people avoid it. So who are the people in your lives, and are they moving toward you, or are they moving, as soon as you guys hit a bump in the road, are they moving in the opposite direction? Are they willing to have the conversation? Are they willing to talk about it? Those conversations are never easy to have or to receive. Nobody wants to be told like, hey, I don't feel like you was being a good friend to me. Even if you really think about it, you probably weren't a good friend to them, but you're in denial. So you're like, you don't really want to deal with it. Or you have to tell someone, hey, you haven't been a good friend to me. And I want us to be able to be the best friends that we could possibly be. So let's have the conversation. As long as as a person is willing to talk, then there's room to get better. The minute that a person doesn't want to talk, it's really difficult to expand on that relationship to get to a place of being on the same page if you don't ever want to talk about it.
Definitely.
I think we also have to get to a place where we don't immediately associate change with negativity. Because then that'll make having the conversation a little bit easier. People think because we aren't the way we were when we met 10 years ago. I mean, we're not supposed to be. In some respect, as far as like how tight we are, cool. How well we get along, great. But as we start to evolve, we change in personality, just getting older, our lives change, things happen. Um, Being able to say, hey, this changed and this is how it's affecting me, whether that be good or bad, what can we do about it? And then, understanding that whether that change results in you guys staying friends and getting better or not being friends, just knowing that you're making the best decision for the relationship. You're still staying committed and loyal to the agreement that you made in the beginning to consider each other's happiness and what's best for the relationship. Sometimes, staying friends isn't the healthiest thing for y'all because y'all are really not showing up for each other. You're not being there for each other. If y'all are both miserable, saying, okay, you're my friend and I love you really doesn't hold any weight at that point, because how can I love you if I'm not, making sure that you're taken care of? That's a responsibility of both people. Most people are like, oh, well, they're not doing this. Okay, but what are you not doing, or what are you doing too much of? Because sometimes we can be doing too much and the other person doesn't feel like they need to show up in that area because you're taking care of all of it. So, it's always, that we always need that balance.
Definitely, there's lack of.
Well, and always to give choice as well. Like you said, it's really about how, like, if things change in your life, to communicate that and then give them choice. If I have, like, I know Aziz is not gonna, but I know this is gonna sound like crazy, but like if I had, say if I had, I wouldn't even say cancer, but the point, like, I'm a woman of a certain age, things are changing. The way I was at 30 is not the same at 40. So, hormones are changing. And so the girl that he knew 10 years ago is not the woman that he knows now. And so the energy is a little different. So as soon as I'm aware of it, I make him aware of it so that he knows that, I'm going through some changes and we have a conversation, but it's all choice. He can say you're moody and I don't want to really deal with that. Or he can say, well, I understand you're going through changes. As long as I know that you are doing your best to be in the best mood, and you may have down days, then we could work with that. So it's really about giving the people that's around you choice based on the changes in your life, and not just feeling entitled to the changes in your life. Just say like, I'm getting older, it's a part of life, like he's gonna have to deal with it. Not really, if he doesn't want to. You know what I mean? And depending on how I react to it, he doesn't have to. You know what I mean? So it's all about choice. He's on this journey with me as long as I allow him to be, but based on how I also treat him, based on the changes in my life as well, because I was committed to be a friend regardless of what changes is going on in my life.
Yeah, and
I would say, go ahead, Jen.
I just want to hit on because all of this is basically going back to what you were saying about being empathetic, and I think that that's really important, because just to kind of touch back on when someone is being honest and saying like, hey, we need to talk about our relationship. You think that as a person is being spoken to, you kind of if you're not in a good place because you're the person who's being the bad friend, right? Looking at it from your perspective, but it's not easy to tell somebody else that, you know what, you're not being a good friend. There's so many feelings that you know that this person's going to be feeling, so many thoughts that you're not going to know about at that very moment, like the emotions. There's so much energy, a shift of energy, a shift of everything, and a big risk that you're taking. So, you know, while you're on the defense, you're not even thinking about what it's like for the person to have to actually be like, hey, we need to talk. You know, if you have people that you're accountable for and accountable with, to hear that, hey, like we need to talk, it's like
I know. Your heart starts beating, you start sweating.
It's like, yeah, you just be like, well, what did I do? Like, I mean, can we talk now? Like, you kind of want to kind of get it over with because you're like, what am I anticipating here? What did I do wrong? What's gonna happen? You know, so touch on that. Like, it's very, I do agree. I don't practice this nowhere near as much as I probably should, when it comes to being accountable in that way, in the sense of like being empathetic. But you know, when you listen to other stories and you actually see it and you're on the other end of it, you realize how important it is to be empathetic in a relationship and how much that can literally kill the opportunity for growth.
Definitely. So, you know, we touched on a variety of things just now that I'm just like digesting, but let's just focus on in a relationship, changing is inevitable in life in general, right? So change is always in flux. So you never have to focus on change. But I'm going to say something that might be mind blowing for people, but change is actually a sign that there is a problem until it's not. Meaning, once something changes, now a discussion needs to be had. Because every person is waking up expecting that person to be the same person that they signed on for.
Yeah.
What gives us security is knowing that that person is the same person we signed on for. As soon as they're not the same person, our relationship changes. So therefore, we have to have a discussion. Then once we have the discussion, that change turns into something normal, and it goes back to where we could depend on that person to be exactly who they say they're going to be. But so many people stay in the flux of change. We're going to change. But at the end of the day, that's something, anytime somebody states the obvious, they're not in a place to really have the discussion. Changes are obvious. What we're trying to build is we're trying to get an address that we never change. We getting land to build on so we can have somewhere to go, a place we identify at all times. We drive down the street, we put in our GPS, we do all kinds of things. So we want to understand where we're going. But I want to be clear that, you know, though change is inevitable, and like Lyric said, change is not necessarily the worst thing or a bad thing. But in a relationship, it's a problem because it starts a different discussion. So that's why we always get antsy and anticipated, because it could change how our lives are and our relationship. So that's why I get scary. So it is a sign that there may be a problem. Even if you got a promotion, that change is good for you, but it may not be good for your partner. So we have to think about it. Change does cause havoc within the relationship, but it doesn't have to be the end of a relationship. It doesn't have to be a problem, a persistent problem in the relationship. If we address the change and we start making the change something we agreed to, and then we move forward within the change, and it becomes our life that we agreed to. But a relationship flourishes as long as the agreements are unbroken. That's what allows us to flourish in our relationships. Signing on for agreements that you can work through for a lifetime. So people do change, but their core values, I knew the same people. I walk on the street and see the same people I seen 10 years ago, and I could identify their core values, and it's the same. I know who they are. I haven't seen them in 10 years, but I know something about them, and I know who they are based on what I knew they valued in life, and it didn't change. But a lot has changed. But who they are hasn't changed. That's probably why I'm still going to give them a pound and keep walking. You get what I'm saying? Because I know why we didn't coexist. So yeah, though people do change, people do grow, people do evolve. the whole point is once you get to a place to commit, that means you already came to a place to agree on how we're going to structure our life. And now you're just building the life you want, which is also change, right? Building is a change, but we're going to call it building.
Mm-hmm.
We're building the life we want together.
Yeah,
So go
everyone
ahead.
everyone wants stability. So the minute that you
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
the minute that you seem unstable and you're always looking for something new, it does put the relationship in this weird place, especially for someone who wants to build with you. If
Yeah.
you're always indecisive or you're not sure what you want or you don't really quite know what makes you happy, how could I truly invest in your joy if you don't even know what makes you happy? You know what I mean? Like it's just something as simple as that. So yeah, when a person is really still searching and they are on this whole self-discovery, it's really hard to connect with them, and a lot of those people feel very misunderstood, but it's really difficult for us to pinpoint how to support you if you don't even know how to support you, you know.
Yeah.
So yes, like you said, it's inevitable that we're going to evolve based on our circumstances and what's happening around us and what's going on in life, but when you have someone that's changing all the time, it's really difficult to really connect with them.
Definitely. And I would use the word for relationship purposes. I will always use the word adapt
Adapt, yeah.
because change is too broad, but adapting, you have to adapt to different circumstances. That's a guarantee. And that helps a relationship flourish, our ability to adapt to things that are out of our control.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what helps us flourish because we obviously are wearing masks now. We obviously
I
can't,
know, it's crazy.
yeah, we can't really touch, hold, and feel strangers anymore. Like it's a different time. Everybody was forced to adapt. The people who flourished are the people who understood their core values, the people who were able to discuss it, and the people were saying, okay, we're going to adapt. There's going to be a change in our relationship. But what can we find that's going to keep us the same?
Hmm.
And I'm telling you, in every relationship, what we're fighting for all the time is identifying what makes us the same.
Hmm.
We're ready for commonality. We're not ready for differences. So don't go in a relationship saying, we're different. That's not what you're looking for. Different is strangers. You're
Yeah.
looking for something that makes you common. You're looking for something that makes you the same. So when you're maintaining and you have to adapt, you're searching for what makes y'all two the same. What do I remember about the relationship? You get what I'm saying? So, I mean, we have 5 minutes. So,
Well, I will
we're
go back
closing
to
up.
Facebook, and Anisha said that the discussion is necessary to get to the root cause of the issue. So she agreed with us. Um, just overall, oh, Miss Brown is on. Hi, Miss Brown. Oh, Mahogany.
All right.
Sorry. I thought you put Miss Brown, Jasmine. Sorry. Hi, Mahogany. Just overall, there's many ways to figure out if you are in an accountable relationship, but we wanted to hit on the 4 points because we wanted to give everyone something to think about. And it starts with these 4 points that we had that we discussed earlier when we first got on. Sorry. I was looking for the list. So, do you know if you're accountable in relationships? You have to define what it means to be in an accountable relationship. You can't hold somebody accountable if you guys are going off of 2 different or 3 different definitions. Do you or are all people focused on best practice? There's many ways to do things, but are you guys all thinking about the group and doing what's best for the group at all times? Are you motivated by their joy? Are you investing in what makes them happy and they investing in what makes you happy? And are you making lifetime plans together? Are you just doing the day-to-day stuff, going to brunch and hanging out every weekend, or are you really thinking about your future together and looking at the people in your life as if they're going to be in your life forever? And most people think as friends that's unrealistic, but you should always have a good support system. You're gonna have a significant other. You may have children, but your friends are the ones that's gonna help you through life. They're gonna be your support. Your husband or your wife or your significant other should never be your everything. You need other people around, and it's really important for you to foster that relationship. And when you are making decisions, factoring the people that are around you when you're making those life-changing decisions.
Definitely. And I just really want to just touch, we're on our way out. So I want to touch on what joy is. Joy is having a purpose. When you two have a purpose together, you're going to have joy. You're not necessarily going to be happy all the time.
Yeah,
It's
no.
going to be work. But you're going to have joy because you can see the destination. So understand, when we're talking about joy, we're talking about investing in each other's purpose. Understand what purpose you serve in their life, what purpose they serve in their life, what's their hopes and dreams, and be fully invested in that, them hopes and dreams. You know, so that's what brings a person ultimate joy when you have purpose. Because everybody is very miserable and sad when they lack purpose. But when you have purpose, you can't tell a person anything. Their eyes is wide open. So, and I just wanted to leave y'all with that. But you know, we had a whole podcast on this that's coming out in our 4th season. So if y'all want to get more in depth, it's going to be out soon. So y'all can actually look it up on AccountableLove.com or wherever you listen to
LoveIsAGroupJourney.com.
LoveIsAGroupJourney.com. My bad. Or wherever you listen to podcasts, we everywhere. Spotify, you know, it's not iTunes no more.
We on
Apple
it's not on. And Google Play doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But
So,
iHeartRadio.
We were just talking about change. That's
yeah.
exactly what we're doing. We have to adapt. But
Well,
I hope everybody.
You can check out our podcast on our website, loveisagroup.journey.com. You can go on YouTube. We have videos and our podcast on there as well. And this whole conversation will be on YouTube as well as Facebook. So
Definitely.
check us out.
Enjoy. So we hope everybody enjoyed the discussion. Lyric and Jasmine, thanks for being on. Anissa.
And wait, one more thing. If you guys need help, if you need support with creating or reestablishing accountable relationships, we have sessions for that. We have friendship sessions. So you can check them out on loveisgroupjourney.com as well. If you go onto our homepage, you'll see a book a session button and it'll take you to the page that you need to go to. So if you need help, if you are in a place where you are struggling within the relationship or you are building new relationships and you want to make sure that you're starting out the right way, we can help you get there.
Definitely. So we enjoyed the discussion, another great discussion. I hope everybody has a great night. You know, enjoy.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Good night.
Bye.